For most of my life, I've felt more fear and fear of pain, more pain and more fear of pain than I've felt joy, curiosity, etc. And I wanted to, in this video, break down my particular map for creating pain. So the first thing is noticing something that is painful. And so let's take homelessness in my city, because it's painful every single time I drive by a homeless individual in one of the wealthiest counties in the United States. And it's remarkable that, when I fly to Thailand, I don't see homeless people the way I do in the United States. And so it's clearly not a money problem. The median income in San Rafael is, I think, is it $150,000 or $250,000 is the average income. And in Thailand, it's $300 a month or $3,000. So we've got about 20 to 30 times the income in the United States that we have in Thailand, and we have tons of homelessness versus no homelessness in Thailand. So this is a painful thought. It's painful to see the same people going by, etc. So I noticed something painful. Now, I have done some tests on Reddit, and there's another Quora, to see if there are any cities in the United States that don't have homelessness. And according to all the replies, there is homelessness in every single city in America. And so this little microcosm of pain, of seeing the same unhappy faces day after day, year after year in my city, is replicated throughout the United States. It's then replicated throughout many Western countries, some worse than others. So the next step is to imagine how many people are experiencing that. Now, in the case of homelessness, 42% of homeless have PTSD, which I know about, and I know it's absolute hell. It's absolute hell to have PTSD with a good-paying job, with a wife, with a house, with a dog, with tons of luxury. Now, I can only imagine that it's 5 to 10 times worse to have PTSD and be sleeping under a bridge and harassed by other homeless people and other one's police, etc. And so I imagine, first of all, how many people are experiencing that. We're dealing with tens of millions in Western culture. And I imagine how painful it is for the most vulnerable people in that demographic. And so if I'm feeling pain just looking at it, and they're feeling pain living it, and then there are some that are 20 times, in 20 times more pain because, they were raped and then they were disbelieved and da-da-da. Now the pain can be 50 times the pain of what I'm dealing with. And so I understand that as a statistical probability. The next thing that I do is design research, grounded imagination, a study I took up in high school in my self-designed homeschool program. What would be the easier way of doing it? And so, for example, in San Rafael, we spend up to $65,000 per homeless individual in order to sustain chronic homelessness per person per year. So $65,000 is being spent per person to maintain a situation of chronic shame, chronic PTSD, chronic uncertainty, fear, loneliness, etc., when it would be significantly cheaper to actually help people get a home. So that's the first thing, is you look at the alternative. I look at places like Thailand and why there are no homeless people in Thailand. And I see that really it boils down to one thing. Everyone wants to have a house. 500 years ago, the Native Americans all had their own teepees. The people who do not have a safe legal place to sleep do not have a safe legal place to sleep because that has been legally removed from them. And it's been a systematic series of dissociation from our humanity. So agricultural land cannot be slept on by homeless people because plants and agriculture are more important than human beings and their lives. Public parks cannot be slept in by our homeless because, again, they're not for the public. And so there are actually patrols out as we speak, making sure that anyone who's homeless that wants to sleep on public land cannot do so. Laws have been passed to make sure it's illegal for our homeless to sleep in their cars, which takes away that avenue. And they cannot afford the $650,000 house price that has been mandated by law. Now, when I say mandated by law, if you add up all of the regulation, first of all, the zoning sweep eliminates about 70% of all of the land that could be built on. So the zoning sweep creates a scarcity mentality when there is, in fact, no scarcity. And it does so by taking off the table 75% of land for parks, for agriculture, and for commercial, as well as artificial codes that mean you cannot build on it, meaning they say you have to meet these criteria to build, and there are certain bits of land that just don't meet those criteria. As an example, if the land requires that you put in 4 to 6 parking places, so if you want to build here or put up a tent, you have to build a driveway for 4 to 6 cars. Now you can say, I'd like to live an eco lifestyle, and I'm going to have an electric bicycle. I don't plan to have company, and I'd like to build on this land. But you are legally prevented. So we have the zoning designation sweep, which eliminates 70% of the land, creating a scarcity mentality that drives up the costs 70%. Next, you have the code sweep, which increases the cost from building a basic livable unit, as someone might do in Thailand, increases the cost by more than 30 times. So what one could build without any permits in Thailand is made 30 times more expensive, 30 times more difficult, and 30 times slower. Because a Thai person can buy some 2x4s, a few tin sheets, and can tack up a little bedroom in the afternoon. In the location I am in, San Rafael, it might take 3 months to 3 years and $50,000 of drawing costs, the engineer's cost, the architect's cost, etc., just to be able to get the permit to build a $650,000 house, which is what your house is going to cost if you apply all the various regulations. So we have the various levels of sweeping: the permit sweep, the land zoning sweep, and the code regulation sweep. And then you have the dynamic that even if you have enough money to pay the mortgage, etc., you've got to prove it in a variety of ways. So you've got the banking sweep. And then you've got community planning sweep and neighbors and blah, blah, blah. So you've got 5 impediments imposed by local law, which see millions of Americans homeless. So imagine how easy it could be if we change the design. In other words, if human beings came first, one of the things that immediately might come to mind is, for example, tunnels. Elon Musk has developed a boring machine that can tunnel a mile for $1 million. Well, you can't build a basic house for less than $650,000. If you could do a mile of tunneling, let's say under public land or under agricultural land, and would allow 1,200 or 120 square foot sleeping areas rather than 1,200 square foot minimum house size. So you have the whole sweep of minimum square footage as well. It's not just that every bit of structure has to be absurdly overbuilt. It's that you've got to build a house that is bigger than you want to build. Every time I've tried to build a house, I have been told that the house I wanted to build was too small, so I had to redesign it to be bigger than I wanted, needed, or cared to afford. Now, this is not in anyone's interest, because when I redesign and build the bigger house, the neighbors have to look at a bigger house. The fire department has to put out a fire in a bigger house. The view is blocked by a bigger house. More trees have to be taken down to fit the bigger house, and there is more ecological footprint on the bigger house. I then have to pay more money to clean a bigger house, etc., etc. So everyone loses with the bigger house, so let's make it a legal requirement that you have to build, around here it's 1,200 square foot minimum. So you look at, okay, we don't have a housing crisis at all. All of the homeless I talk to want to create safe, legal places to sleep, but they have been systematically blockaded at every step of the way. So we see in Thailand, they manage on a $300 a month salary to eliminate all homelessness with zero interference. And it gets sad because first we create the housing crisis with a whole host of U.S. policy. And then we fund billions of dollars to fix the problem we created, all the while shaming and blaming our homeless for the problems we created. So then we say, oh, we need millions and millions of dollars per town in HUD money, Federal Housing Development Fund. And that means buying $650,000 units for people who would happily redesign a shipping container if they were legally permitted to do so. So you have a double whammy. This in turn creates resentment in the surrounding community, because why should I have to work my ass off for a $650,000 house I don't want to have to pay that much for, just so that someone else can be given it for free, simply because their legal rights to creating a TP, a safe lean-to, etc., have been eliminated. So this, when you look at a design like that, you see the shame, the PTSD, the humiliation, and the high taxes, and the inducement of public resentment, all wrapped up in one sick and dysfunctional design. Next comes the examination of why are we stuck in a rut? Why is it that we're spending millions of dollars to create a problem and then spending billions of dollars to fix some of the problem we're creating? Because they don't have this problem in Iceland, they don't have this problem in Thailand, they don't have this problem as much in Copenhagen, they don't have this problem as much in Utah. So why is it that we're stuck in this rut? Well, when I ask to see the housing plan of the city, they don't have one. When I ask to interview them about why they banned this and that, they don't want to interview. When I write to the mayor, he doesn't want to respond to the points because these points hit close to home. Why do we need a government to systematically harm its public and then spend billions of dollars in taxpayer money to solve a problem that never needed to be created in the first place? Well, this is very unpopularly political examination. And so I am systemically stonewalled, meaning if I go to a nonprofit today and say I'd like to donate a few hours of useful time to the homeless, most of them have no idea what to do with me. So that's one reason it's created. There's no inlet for volunteering. If I tried to donate 5 jackets this past winter, I asked again, a local homeless part and my city, where can I donate the jackets? They have no idea. So you see incredible incompetence, incredible inefficiency, where even if people ask to help, there's no setup to receive the help. So if there's no setup to receive help, if there's systemic rejection of new ways of thinking, if the local city government, etc., that is constantly piping out letters saying, we want to hear from you, doesn't actually want to talk about the issues, then you understand why the thing is not changing. So that's the next point in the creation of pain. Now, number 6 is I accept and recognize that this is not limited to homelessness. Because, for example, if you suggest OKRs, which is a technique that Intel and Google uses to dramatically improve performance, and the mayor and the council and the homeless coordinator rejects OKRs, won't even talk about them, you realize this has nothing to do with homelessness. This is willful and systemic ignorance, willful and systemic malpractice, because it's not their money. It's not their money on the line. It's everyone else's money. And you start seeing, you're not incentivized because it's not your money. So you realize this doesn't apply just to homelessness. This applies to hundreds of areas, because effective goal setting, etc., applies to all areas of government. If you're not interested in doing effective goal setting in the homeless arena, you're not aware and interested in using effective goal setting in any arena. Why, most people can't be that irrational that they would use intelligent, techniques in one area but not in another. So I explore how the same dynamic will stop and prevent change in hundreds of areas. And so you realize this is a huge problem. And then you realize that this isn't just the stupidity of San Rafael. This is the stupidity of local government in the majority of cities around the country, and probably in multiple countries. And so, again, the pain and the awareness of the causes of the pain expands exponentially. Second, finally, I feel angry, hurt, helpless, scared, and overwhelmed because I'm one person against a city, etc. And while I don't take it personally, it makes me aware both of the cause of millions and millions and millions and millions of people's pain, of the fact that it could be very profitable and easy to make a change. For example, why isn't the city allowing me to put up a deck down in the back house where a tent could be erected, and put up a porta potty that could be changed by the city, and allow a homeless person to stay there and pay the rent that they can actually pay, which is around $300 to $400 a month. So they'd buy their tent for $100, they'd pay $300 to $400 to me in rent, they'd have their pad, their porta potty, they would not be infecting the community with contagious diseases, they would have a sense of safe, legal place to sleep, I'd have an extra $300 or $400 a month, everyone would win. But we can't possibly do that because that would be good for human beings, but it would be against the zoning regulation. Well, why don't we change the regulation? Well, human beings are not more important than zones and regulations. And that's when you start realizing that we are a country of law rather than a country of people. We are a country of money rather than a country of people. So as soon as you realize that the core problem is that human beings are taking a secondary seat to both law and money, and that the only reason millions of Americans have PTSD and are unsafe and are being driven crazy, etc., is that they are considered less important than either law or money, you understand the deepest aspect of the problem altogether, which is that is a way of thinking that will create innumerable amount of suffering indefinitely because it doesn't work. And it's not true. Money is created by human beings. So the story of the golden goose, the goose that lays the golden eggs, is the story that if you want to be rich, you take care and you guard the goose that lays the golden egg. Because sure, you can get a golden egg and you can get another golden egg and you can steal 3 golden eggs. But if you've got a goose that lays continual golden eggs, that's what creates real and eternal wealth. People create money. People create things. People create laws. So to say that laws and money, the golden eggs that people have laid, are more important than the goose that lays the golden eggs, thus laws and money should be used as the basis for separating people to be treated decently and people to be treated horrifically, is absurd. It's not mathematically sound, but that's what we're doing. So I feel scared, angry, and overwhelmed by that. And finally, I explore everything I could do and why it won't work. So, for example, the more angry I get in my communication with the city, the less they engage with my emails. But they're not willing to acknowledge. If you disengage politely, we've all had experiences of, being politely told how we're so concerned about your opinion, but we're not going to do anything about it. If I try and run for office, I think about all the, entrenched different factions within the city that will try and sabotage the run because, again, they're not interested in changing homelessness. They're interested in perpetuating a comfortable status quo for city employees. And so I understand what I'm up against, and I feel tired. I feel exhausted. And I am left with pain. And this is the process that I use to create pain in thousands of different arenas without resolution. Without resolution. Because what's necessary to shift this map in a systemic way is a new definition of intelligence. Intelligence is the efficiency with which energy is transformed into human well-being. Now, if we understand that we're spending $60,000 a year to shame people, make them miserable, send them to the ER, send them to prison, harass them in public parks, tell them they can't sleep here, then they can't sleep there when there's no place to sleep. When we explore the fact that we're spending vast sums of money to create extraordinary levels of public suffering, and that there is no person in the community that I can find that is particularly alarmed about that or interested in alternatives, we realize that the core issue is intelligence. It is profoundly stupid and ignorant to spend vast amounts of public money to give people PTSD, to harm, shame, humiliate, to breed infectious disease in a whole demographic of the community, which of course then leads to it jumping into the rest of the community. It is profoundly stupid and ignorant. But we don't have a definition of intelligence that says that in order to spend time and money on something, we would have to evaluate, okay, we could spend money in this way and it would create this amount of well-being. We could spend money in this way and it would create this amount of well-being. You see, traffic was recently shut down for a perfectly good bridge to be torn down and rebuilt. Why? Because bridges apparently are more important than people. $4 million to redo a small bridge. Now that $4 million is enough to buy tents and put thousands of homeless in commercial land that is not going to be used for the next 10 years. And give them porta potties and showers. That same $4 million is enough to enable our homeless to house themselves and have a safe, legal place to sleep. And it would create enormous levels of well-being for our homeless and reduce enormous levels of suffering. The bridge that didn't need to get redone stopped traffic and doesn't feel any different than the bridge that was there before. No one's well-being goes up except the contractor who got paid $4 million to redo a bridge. When we look through the frame of intelligence in an intelligent way, the efficiency with which energy, time, money, and natural resources are transformed into human well-being, these things become obvious. But we are not raised to be intelligent. We are raised to copy mathematical formulas, to copy this, etc. We're not raised to be intelligent. So until we have an education system that is intelligent enough to teach the framework of intelligence, it is unlikely that many people would be as disgusted as I am with the framework of spending billions of dollars to hurt people in a way instead of saving millions of dollars to be kind and to help people. And I don't know if it's good or bad that I feel pain after all of this, but the pain does motivate me to do small things, write a little book on homelessness, publish the email exchange to show the absurdity with local government, create a documentary on why we have homelessness in the 5th wealthiest county in the United States. It's worthwhile to explore that because there could be a day. There could be a day when we have an intelligent population that says, this makes no sense at all, and the decades upon decades of miserable, shamed, addictive, PTSD'd American people can actually feel the truth, which is they are more important than money, and they are more important than law. That money and law is created by people to serve people. It is not the ruler of the human spirit.